Do you have a brand new rifle or you have a new optic that you want to mount and you want to learn how to do it yourself? Then this is the video for you. Welcome back. Really happy to have you guys back, and as always, appreciate you guys watching the channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about if you have a new rifle or if you have a new optic and you want to swap it out, and you either don't have time to drop it off at a gun shop, or you just want to learn the skill to do it yourself so you don't have to rely on anyone. I am going to go through the process of how I go about mounting an optic on my rifle. I learned this technique from Jared Halbert at the athlete camp, the Tactical Games athlete camp in the classroom portion 2 years ago. So 100% I'm giving him credit for it. The old way that I used to do it was pretty time consuming, and you needed about 50 to 70 yards to properly do it because you had to level the scope, true the scope, and a mount, and then you also had to have a plumb bob at about 50 to 70 yards to have a true line to make sure that your scope was true and level. In this method, we're going to do it here in the room, and it is super easy, and it's a lot more efficient in time and with equipment. Not super expensive either for what you need. In this video, I am going to mount my new Night Force NX8 1-8 with my Badger Ordnance Condition 1 mount. Full disclosure that I paid for both of these. I like using the Badger Ordnance 1.7 height. For me, that little bit extra over that 154, which is the common height for scope mounts, I find that on the 154 that I am really straining my neck to look down and get low enough. And I've tried 193 heights, and they're very comfortable when you're shooting in any position other than prone. But in prone, I find that a 193 is a little too high, and you're really kind of straining to get a good proper position in eye relief. I mean, for short shooting strings, it's not bad, but if you have a prolonged period of time, it's not really user friendly. So I like using the 1.7. That's just what I like using. So we're going to get into how the process works, and I'll go through all the equipment you're going to need other than a scope and a mount. You're going to need a torque wrench in inch-pounds. I like using a secondary level just to make sure that any other levels you can check against them, make sure that they're all true. This is a Start It level. I do use thread locker, the blue thread locker on my ring screws. You don't have to. This is basically just how I do it, so you can pick and choose what you like. This is actually the new piece of gear that we're going to be using, and it's from a company called Real Avid. I'm not sponsored by them by any means, but I like the product and it works really well. And so after Jared showing this at the athlete camp, it was really cool. So I like passing knowledge on, right? For the most part, that's it. We're gonna dive through in the process and show you what I do. All right, so let's get to the bench. Okay, so what I have here is I just have a bench mounted weapon vise. And what I did is I just leveled the rifle using my bubble level, and it's front to back is not as critical as making sure it's even on this sides here and here. What's important is that when you put your scope rings or one-piece base, doesn't matter what you're mounting, like a bolt action or even a semi-auto, doesn't matter. But when you have your base or your rings, when you put it on a Picatinny mount, you can kind of hear there's room back and forward. So what you want to do is you want to apply force forward to the base. We're just going to put it hand tight for right now. Now that we got that hand tight, I'm just going to take the top of the rings off. It's important that you don't use a torque wrench to loosen screws. It's not good for the torque wrench. You can mess with it. Now, here's something that I see people do, and I don't fully understand why. When you mount your scope, you don't want to have the rings. So your erector in your scope is in this part right here. And your erector is basically your elevation and windage adjustments that move it up and left and right, up, down, left and right. If you put your scope too close to where the rings clamp down to the center, this is the weakest point of your scope. And I don't care what brand scope you have. It can be Night Force, Vortex, Collis, I don't care. Even the biggest name brand scopes, they're a mechanical piece of equipment. And that right there is going to be your weakest point in the scope. If you put the rings too close to there, you can actually damage the scope. You can damage the erector or pin the reticle, and it won't move from that point, and you're gonna have to send it back. Anytime you're mounting an optic, what you wanna do is just have sufficient amount of space in between the center of the scope and your ring bases. So here you have plenty. And if you needed to, you could absolutely move it up or move it back. But what I do is I like to try and get it as center as possible and then go from there. If you were to add some thread locker, blue is going to be a sufficient choice, or you can look at Vibertite as a good alternative. Now what I do is I just loosely grab one or two threads just to keep the ring so the screws are on and the rings won't fall off by accident. Definitely not tight, so I can still turn the optic, right? So I can still move the optic and I still have plenty of room away from the rings that I don't have to worry about it crushing, all right? Now, because Badger Ordnance has a long history with Marines, they actually put on the mount exactly the torque specifications you need. Lucky for me. I'm going to take my torque wrench, which is in inch pounds, right? And I'm going to adjust it to 65 inch pounds. We're at 65 inch pounds, and I'm using a 1/4 inch adapter. Now we're going to go ahead and mount this piece onto the rifle. The way it's going to work is there is a Picatinny adapter right here on the bottom. This is actually a flashlight, and that flashlight's going to shine through the optic right here, and it's going to project it. Scroll over here. It's going to project it onto this board right here. Now both of these have a level. All right, so this is going to be mounted on the optic, and it's going to make sure it's level there. And this right here is it has a level, and that's going to make sure it's level on the surface it's at. And I'm going to push that back, and once I mount this onto here, the flashlight is going to push through the optic. Now when it pushes through the optic, it's actually going to invert the reticle. So it's not going to look like it normally would. It's going to be upside down. However, you're going to have perpendicular and like vertical and horizontal stadia lines in the reticle. So you don't have to worry about if it's upside down. It'll still give you something to reference off of lines that'll make it true. It's going to slide forward to where that will slide down. Slide up to it, just like that. Clamp this part down. Now, what's happened is this part right here will slide, right? And what you do is you attach this part to the Picatinny in front, and just enough to where it will slide over the front portion of your scope, and it'll slide down. And what that's going to do is that's going to line up the flashlight to the front objective of the scope, so when it projects out that way, you'll have your reticle. Here's a front view of what it looks like once you mount this portion onto the front of the rifle in front of the scope. Now, as you see on the bubble level, it is slightly off. So I need to make this level. There we go. Now that I have leveled the flashlight portion to the front of the scope, and I've leveled it to the bubble, what I'm going to do now is I am going to level the portion right here, which is the grid, and it has a bubble level up there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to level it to where the optic is going to shine back out to it. It might be kind of hard to see right now, but the bubble level is actually in between the two lines, and I've set it up to where it is level to the table that it's sitting on right now. You can play with the optical adjustment to try and fine-tune the picture. It's kind of hard to look at on the camera, but what's happening is that the image is getting blurry, and then it's getting clear and sharp. Right there, I have the sharpest image to my eye. Again, it might be hard to see on the camera, but it is pretty clear. Once you have it like that, you go ahead and tighten down the screws on the scope rings, and you make sure that your reticle doesn't come out of alignment as you tighten down the screws. And then once you tighten the screws down enough in a start, like you want to go in a zigzag pattern like you would do on a car tire, once you have those tight enough, then you can use your torque wrench and apply the appropriate amount of torque to each screw. And once that's done, and you can see that your reticle didn't move, then you're good to go. Now that all the screws are torqued down, I'm going to take a oil-based marker and I'm going to witness mark all the screws and anything that I torqued down. And the reason for this is that if something goes a little funny while shooting and I can't seem to zero the rifle, I can go back to the witness marks and see if anything has been moving or shifting. All right, that is the process that I use to mount a scope now. Again, really speeds up your process. You don't have to be outside, or don't have to have a longer range to verify that you have a level reticle. What's really nice about this method that I'm using is that I can do it here inside my gun room, and I don't have to worry about being outside or having a longer distance. That's the gist of how I go about doing it. Hopefully this helps people that are interested in trying something new, a new method. Maybe you have a method that you've been using for a long time and you want to try something new, or maybe you've never tried it before and this will give you a chance to try it. If nothing else, it's just another tool in your toolbox. So far I've had pretty good luck with it, and it seems like other people have had good luck with it as well. Being in that Jared showed me how to do it, so I'm guessing it works for him. That pretty much wraps up this video. As always, if you have any questions or any kind of comments, just put them down below. I really appreciate everyone coming and watching the video and enjoying the content. Please give the video a like and subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you'll know when more content's coming out. Definitely stay tuned because the reloading series is going to continue, and we have some really cool content coming for that. Thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, we'll see you at the range. All right, bye. Or rifle that you need to